Welcome to the podcast, How You Build It, a show of financial advisors and fund managers and the real stories behind their businesses. I'm Vincent Hayes, and on the show today with me is Hennie du Plessis from RIG in South Africa. Now, RIG is a company with purpose. I met the founder, Willem Lategan, about 15 years ago, and I was so impressed by this company's name and Willem's drive. But there were significant challenges RIG faced the last 18 months, but a little bit more about that later. Hennie, it's so nice to have you on the show, and welcome all the way from South Africa.
Hi, Vincent. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to our chat today.
Hennie, so let's start by giving the audience a bit of context in terms of who is Hennie and who is RIG.
Yeah, so I'm at heart a financial advisor. I started out as an accountant, doing my articles in the middle of South Africa in Bloemfontein, at TRO's under Niels. Then, yeah, in my final year of articles, Willem approached me. At that stage, I think RIG was about 3 months old. So I started 3 months after the beginning of RIG about 13 years ago. So then, well, I could almost say the rest is history because it's been just sort of carrying on from there. But Willem and Niels actually did a lot of research. I want to maybe go back to the story of RIG and how that started up. But Willem and Niels did a lot of research on how they wanted to start RIG and what was different from what they wanted to do compared to the other financial advisors or brokers or wealth managers at that time. So Willem left a job that he had for about 12 years in the Free State, decided to go into partnership with Niels, who's a chartered accountant, deciding that sort of connection between the two of them is a lot stronger than what it is usually at that stage, what it was between the banker and the CA and the financial advisor. So the relationship actually sat with them. But then what they did was they went to the US, spent about 3 months while Willem was on his garden leave from his previous job, just researching and sort of the base on what RIG wanted to be built. And it's actually where the name came from because the verse that came across their paths was Luke 12 verse 21. And that we mustn't be rich in earthly wealth, but we must be rich in God. So RIG based on Luke 12:21, rich in God. So it's always a nice conversation starter. If people do ask us our story, it's not the idea that it's a selling point, but just that it's obviously just the base on which we were set, and then just being based on that, always making sure that the way we give advice is just in complete excellence. So it was just something that we always brought ourselves back to. They did a lot of research of Kingdom Advisors and Ron Blue Institute and Ron Blue Company in the US, and just seeing how they did things and how we could sort of replicate that we can actually give advice to clients on not just the financial capital place, but also get to a client situation where we get to social and social and spiritual capital in the end. So it was very intriguing for me to start in that sense. I was very young at that stage, but grew very quickly. And I absolutely love working with money. I love just working with young couples and just that responsibility of and stewardship of materialism so it's a long answer, but it is quite a long story and long journey to get where I am today.
No, it's actually interesting because I can still remember the first time I met Willem in the Seed Investments office in Cape Town. It must have been in 2012. And then actually Niels, but Niels I've known for many years. He's been his dad's been my dad's accountant, and then he took over the business. So personally, I've also got a long journey with Niels as well. So it's very good. Hennie, so there was a massive moment that occurred in RIG, unfortunately, just over a year ago in RIG. Would you maybe just respectfully just kind of share what that was?
Yeah, I think it's not something that we could have been prepared for or what we were envisioning the future of RIG being at all. But I think the people that know us or know our story obviously know Willem Lategan. He's the founder of RIG. Had big plans of where we're going to move towards, but He unfortunately had a heart attack in February last year, February 2025. Went to hospital, got a stent, and then unfortunately 10 days later had a second heart attack and then passed away quite suddenly. I think our world was sort of thrown upside down quite intensely, because it was. I think we felt Willem was invincible, and I also think he felt he
Mm.
was invincible. He was our visionary. He was the one leading. He was naturally gifted with the gifting of strategy, um, looking at things now, but also 3, 5, 10
Mm.
years going ahead. So it was quite.
I mean, even for me from the outside, Henny, when I look back at what Willem and Karen has done, they were ahead of the game at least 5 years ahead of me in terms of just the vision that they had and the passion for financial services and for clients. And so they definitely been a icebreaker for me as well. That I can also move in there behind them,
Well,
and break.
for us, even being in the business, I think it was at times challenging because we couldn't see that picture immediately. Not me, obviously being a lot younger. It was tough to get stretched and sort of moving beyond what we just see here and now. And I'm quite a diligent person in trying to get things done and try and getting. And then as soon as you sort of feel you're getting something done, the vision is actually a lot further and lot broader than that. And it was very challenging. Willem didn't allow us to settle. So.
Yeah. Always when you looked at the LinkedIn profile, how many places he went to visit the States and Ireland and all these things. But I don't want to, before we move on to the rest of your story, maybe just pause a little bit, Henny, in terms of, I mean, just the shock for you, for the family, for Niels, the whole team. What was it like let's say the first 3 weeks, the first 3 months? Uh, no one can foresee something like that happens. If someone retires and kind of move on, that's something different. But if a key person in the business passes away, that's a massive impact.
Yeah, so I think y- the first few weeks was actually just complete shock. I don't think we completely um, knew how to approach it going further. Luckily, I think the one thing that Willem did do was he pulled me into every single client conversation. So I think just practically I was very lucky that I knew all of our clients. There's no one client that I didn't know what was going on in their situation. But uh, I think the Holy Spirit did put a lot on Willem, and also with Niels being Willem's partner in the business, they actually had a very good conversation of where we are going with this business
And,
in November, December, just before Willem passed away. So I think the first thing that we just basically decided was that myself and Niels, 2 weeks after Willem passed away, was we needed to get together, have a breakaway, and just decide what next. So I think for me, being more the one running the day-to-day client relations, it was extremely helpful to have someone like Niels in that partnership with me, being able to take over what was needed to be done. But to be honest, it did feel like the first initial conversation with clients. It was just having the conversations with them. It was very tough. There were lots of tears. I think I was just very honest with clients of where we are at. We were trying to find our feet. We were trying to sort of just get through the mourning process of it. But the messages that I got from a lot of the clients was very cool, that they actually were very supporting in what we could do, and that they actually backed us. They were very open to the idea of saying, listen, they're with us, they're sticking with us, which helped a lot. So it I don't
mm,
think it would have been that easy if the client situations were different. But it felt like, I think, until about January this year, which was about nearly a year later, it literally just felt like I was just trying to maintain relationships, just trying to make sure that everyone's okay. I think at times not really always even feeling I know what I was doing, but I think just relying on God
mm,
to just keep me
mm,
sort of just calm through most of it. Trusting. I believe, like Willem always taught me, he's like, we shouldn't. be in a space where we also always have this false humility, where we're actually so humble that we don't actually back ourselves properly. And that's something that stuck with me through the whole of the last year, was that I was forced to then move into a place where I had to start backing myself like Willem
Mhm.
would have backed me, which was a big reminder, because I would almost sort of just take a step back, and because I might be younger or something, and not maybe have enough as much experience as a guy who's been in the
Mhm.
industry for 25, 30 years, I was forced into that space where I had to get over that and
Yeah.
back myself and back the knowledge that we actually do have and that we have built up over the last 12, 13 years. But it was definitely just figuring things out. Luckily, I did have Neil, so I think that does help in this whole scenario.
I mean, I think it was also difficult for you guys because you were in different venues, different regions in South Africa.
Mm.
Niels is in Bloom, you in the coast, and the other advisors also spread out. So that's also another complexity, I think.
It is.
I think one thing that's really cool for me is just the time that Niels and Willem spent initially. What you mentioned, the 3 months that they took
Yeah.
off, just to kind of go and say, okay, what is the thing that we want to go after, and what is the what is the goal that we want to get to? I think that was quite significant. And you also mentioned before our chat, you mentioned the 3-year journey that you guys started, or the 3-year strategy that you felt that you or that Willem started implementing in January last year. And so I guess that was also a quick snap in that strategy
Yes.
that you had. Okay, this is something for the next 3 years, and then a couple of months later, he's not with us anymore.
Yeah, so Willem always had the vision that he wanted to go out into the world to help bring faith-based funds to the rest of the world,
Mhm.
not just have faith-based funds sort of just limited to the US, that it can be from the US going into the Canada, into the rest of the world. So I know Willem was known as that, and sort of the crazy South African that was traveling all over the world to sort of be in contact with most people. So that was where he was going to in the vision work. And because he was doing that, the idea was that he was going to give the South African business over to me. So that's where the 3-year
Okay.
sort of strategy
Mhm.
plan actually came in. So he was going to probably take a step back with client relations directly. And
And give it over to you.
in 2024, we basically started that conversation that he was preparing me, and we were going to probably make the announcement at the end of 2026 that I was going to take over in the next year or two.
Okay.
But that I'm busy going in sort of a mentorship program with him. And although we had started it previously, but the idea was that I would have taken over RIG South Africa completely. But obviously, with what did happen, luckily we had enough of the conversations, but it
Yes.
was obviously the mentorship up to a point. It was there. We were busy for about a year. I think myself and Willem spent a lot of time together, so it's not like the mentorship didn't happen, but it was about 2.5 years earlier than what initially was supposed to happen, and that we were sort of forced into. Yeah.
So maybe just for the listeners that are not with faith-based funds, can you maybe just like in 2 sentences just share what that means?
So faith-based funds is just, I can almost say, like the Sharia of the world, where you have certain things that are excluded, but more from the Muslim side. That faith-based funds is just that we have a Christian fund as well. That certain stocks are actually screened out. That if you don't believe that something like pornography, or if you don't want alcohol in your portfolio, or
Mm.
if you don't want weaponry or drugs and certain pharmaceuticals, that sort of goes against your beliefs. The idea is that we can have a fund that actually fits our belief system, that we can actually be proud of money that we are invested. We can also be proud of where our funds are invested, not
Yeah.
necessarily just always about making money.
So it's about being a custodian of your assets and making sure that you
Yes.
agree with where it's invested, that it
Yes.
aligns with your family values. So maybe
Yeah, so
just
I
I'm
think
gonna
Willem had the slogan. It's an Afrikaans slogan, but the English translation of it is how we make money actually matters.
yes, okay. So maybe just I'm gonna give a call out to whoever's listening, to all the fund managers in South Africa, that if that's your passion, then make contact with Henny.
Yeah,
because that
please.
was the main thing for Willem, is to go and set up those funds in Ireland. Henning, so just quickly, in terms of the, let's gotta move on a little bit with the discussion, but the struggles that you had still having in the business, and maybe some of the discussions that you had with Willem back then, one of the, some of the main pain points. What was the some of the important kind of stuff in the business you thought, man, we should give more attention to this?
I think the main thing, I think where we did get hurt as a business, obviously, I think most firms go through the growing pains of trying to get advisors to stick, especially younger advisors, to stick long term
Mm,
into a vision, because it takes a long time to actually build a relationship with the advisor, have them have the same way that we give advice. And then it really does give a big knock to a business when after 2 or 3 years an advisor moves on either to someone else or decides that they want to move out. And while we were sort of building this up, I think our system, I don't want to, it might sound quite harsh, but our system actually got a little bit clogged with 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 relationships that we didn't actually have the
okay.
relationship with the client that we wanted to have, because I think the numbers were too high. We've never been a firm where we have the idea that one advisor has to look after 300-400 clients.
Yeah.
We actually look at a place where I think an advisor looking after someone with an investment book needs to probably limit it to maximum as a young advisor, maybe at 250 clients, but probably below 100 clients that you can actually give the prop. And we were actually sitting at about 200 clients probably per advisor. And that caused that we didn't actually get around to all the clients how we wanted to. So I think we were actually, that was a big part of what we did in the last year and a half, was just focusing on probably bringing a stronger product to our client. And by product, not the type of investment or
Mm,
the type of life insurance or anything that you sell, but the way we give advice, the fact that we can get to that point where we can actually have a bigger impact in people's lives, not necessarily just on how well the investments actually go, getting to know them, getting to know families, getting to know where they actually, what are their dreams. We did a course by Bruce Wilkinson, Dare to Dream Again. It's sort of picking up on that thing. What is that ultimate dream that God put on their heart that they actually want to achieve? Because then you have a lot more clarity and accountability when giving advice. And that is why RIG was started, is that we can have that type of impact in clients. We weren't there to be everyone out there's advisor. I think it's sort of
mhm.
people that are aligned with our values, and people that we can make a difference a lot further than just being an investment manager or financial advisor there. So that was challenging to sort of put those different clients in different boxes, and
Yes.
then appointing a few new advisors to actually help us to look after the clients, because we don't want to lose any clients. We want to just have big enough impact with all our clients. So we did appoint new advisors to help us with that.
So what does that conversation look like when you talk to families about their values and how that aligns with the investments? What is the pros you guys go through?
Obviously, different clients. I think what you need to read the room sometimes, but it's so cool to see when you're working with a client, especially when you maybe pull the spouse into a conversation, or
Mhm.
uh, there's just this interesting light that goes on when clarity is achieved. I think that's initially the first thing that we bring to a situation, is bringing all this chaos that comes across our table, and actually being able to translate it into a very simplistic plan of where we can see you going towards. But I think there's often a very big mismatch of where you think you're going, but where
Mhm.
all these documents are pointing you towards. So I think having those more aligned, then obviously when you open up the conversations with regards to wills and estate planning, it's always a conversation where children will come across the table. But it's, some families are actually very, very wealthy, but it's not necessarily just leaving the kids with a bunch of money. How do they then steward this? Because that's what we're ultimately here for. Whatever we've been given, we are going out there to steward what we've been given, and it's journeying with the client. So stewardship is a very common theme, Christian or non-Christian. Even with
Mhm.
non-Christian clients, I've had conversations that they also don't want to spoil their children with money.
Mm. Mm.
Stewardship and being responsible with what we've given is not, but obviously we don't shy away from the idea that we are a Christian based. We have a biblical worldview of how we look at finances, and it's the
Mm.
way we're going to give advice. But
Mm.
the so clients are actually very open to it. I don't. Sometimes it's difficult to get them to go deeper and spend the time needed to
Yeah.
go deeper. So there's we don't. We have about 5 or 6 families running concurrently, where it's like a year, 2 year process where we start with values work, strength finder. We start with working geniuses. We sort of build out how they should communicate with each other, who fits in where,
Mm.
different roles, and where we end up at the end of that process actually helping them to write up a family constitution that's actually not meant for just this generation, but getting through the second generation. But it's something that will last third, fourth, fifth generation, because there's a lot of research that shows that if a family business can get to the fourth generation, they will be one of some of the most successful businesses in the world, which is where our passion actually lies. So I'm very for the idea of protecting generational wealth, but protecting of generational wealth is not just the transfer of money, it's the transfer of
Yes,
value,
values.
which is even more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work with values work. I think if
So,
you ask the average guy now, average advisor now, if he knows his own values, and most people say, yes, I have values, but they're not going to be able to
mm.
mention 3 or 4 or 5 values that they actually have. You actually need to sit down and go think about it a little bit more.
Is what is interesting is Thanksgiving in Canada last year in October. Um, and it's actually something that I do with my family, that I did with my family, but also start initiating with other families here. Is I've asked my kids, in 10 years from now, what are the 4 or 5 things that you want us to talk about at the
Mhm.
dinner table? My kids are late teenagers, early adult kids, and so we had a really good conversation. And then each one shared their top 2 or 3, and then we kind of ring fence it into 3 or 4 topics, and then we distill it to a manifesto.
Mhm.
Like this is who the Hayes family is.
Yep.
And the reason for that is I've read a book called Drift, and how quickly families and companies drift from their values. And so
100%.
the idea that we're going to apply, Henny, is we're going to read it aloud, the manifesto, aloud to each other 3 times a year on Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
Sure.
So that's also a great time, because that's normally when the girlfriends and boyfriends visit the family,
Yeah.
and they need to hear
Mhm.
what we as a family stands for.
And the two,
So
three,
that's
4 year olds in the house, when they actually start having kids one day, it's important for them to hear everything from a young age, actually, as well.
exactly. And so
Mm.
I'm very excited about this thing in terms of taking it out to other clients, but also, as you say, with other businesses and my own business,
Mm.
is the staff need to hear, and we all need to read it aloud. Otherwise, we're going to drift. As simple as
Yeah.
that. But I think it's difficult what you say. We need to have the right tools to be able to, yes, scale the business, just with back office systems and so on. But those systems align with scalability on the value side and the tools that we need to actually be able to draw out what those values are for the clients, because it's not
Yeah.
always that easy. If you ask a person, what is your values?
Yeah.
Most people won't know off the bat what it is. So I think it's really key that, as you say, to have those real tools available to actually draw out those values for the clients.
Yeah.
Maybe just quickly, now that I've mentioned it, the tools in the business, what type of things you guys are using at the moment to help advance the business going, to the next level for you for the next 2 or 3 years, that you feel like is super valuable, but really kind of speaks into your company's own values?
I think I'm gonna maybe the practical tools I'll maybe end off with, but the with the family business planning side of it, I think the biggest tool or the asset that we have is having someone like Karen Lategan,
Mm.
Willem's wife, still in the business, being a psychologist as herself, and being able to play a role on the softer side for our clients. So strength finder coach, also assisting us in the work done when we actually sit and do values work, being able to have different ways that we can pull the values out of those different clients and actually put them together and facilitating those conversations. So her as an asset is still very valuable to us. And actually, there's a lot of clients who even post our meetings getting together, actually spend time with her on a professional capacity to
Mm.
sort a few things out and help with communication. And just, we always talk about the softer side of financial planning. And so really a big asset for us in the business. And we obviously learn a lot from her in that. But in the business side itself, when it comes to just staying in communication with our clients, because I think that's probably the biggest asset we have is how we communicate with our clients and how often and sort of being just a little bit ahead of. I think we've got a big focus this year, especially that we want to be able to give the answer to a client before he actually asks the question,
Mm.
and being ahead of it in that way. And there, I think you mentioned it earlier, but your initial conversation with Willem with Seed Analytics. When we first, it was one of our first big partnerships that we started. And I know you don't really want to necessarily use this to punt product, but I don't think we would be able to have our business where it is today if we didn't have a partner like that. Because I think the way our monthly statements go out, it's with this monthly statement, consolidated statement that we have from Seed, we can put a market review out. We can with the war in Iran going on at the moment. It's quite nice to be able to write an article and actually just discuss with clients, because now they read the article. We've been through this dance before, not necessarily with this specific war, but back to
Mm.
COVID, back to 2008 financial crisis, all those dips and everything. And it's just being able to communicate quite often and rather having, there's no surprises ever with our clients.
Yep.
I've had a few conversations now with clients that sort of asking, okay, what's going on? What's happening? How should I think about this? And it's nice because of what we put in their space. The questions arise and we can actually have the conversation. So big partnership
Mm.
with them. We've had our discretionary fund manager over the years with Portfolio Metrics and Wealth Explorer, and the work we've been able to do there to do proper cash flow planning with clients, not not sort of just putting money away every month and not knowing what our targets and our goals are. And I think the closing of that loop is the work we've been doing with you with WealthStack over the last year as well. Our firm has always been a big believer in Mitch Anthony's work with One Page Financial Plan.
Mm.
And the whole idea about it is just to simplify a very complicated situation. And I feel like with WealthStack, we've got that perfect tool. And now it's developing into also the accountability, the Kingdom Advisor side of it. The way that WealthStack has been built out, it's also giving the opportunity that the client can take responsibility for their own situation. Because if I can do my job properly and explain something so easily that any client can understand it,
Yeah.
irrespective if he's analytical or not, if he can understand his situation and where we are going, there's
Mm.
doesn't matter how far markets fall back, that client will understand what's going on in his situation. And it's not necessary for me always to intervene and be the bearer of bad news, because he's going to understand what's going on in his portfolio and where we are moving towards. And I think that's the biggest thing in planning, is if we can help people create a vision for not 1 or 2 or 3 years, but sort
Yes.
of look
Mhm.
beyond the now, but have our long-term plan in place. And without sort of these tools and simplifying life for us, I think things will get very tough.
Mm. Mm.
So I think those are just a few things that I think has stood out over the last few years. And having a good CRM program and or a system
Yeah.
we also use that also automates quite a few things, sending out birthday messages and reminding us someone's birthday, just from a
Yeah.
relationship point of view. Very, it might seem like mundane things, but very, very valuable if a client gets a
Mm.
call from you. That we actually, there's a funny story. We had a client where we actually sent him a reminder the day before the time that it's his anniversary the next day, and he actually phoned us the next morning saying, "Thank you very
Thank
much,"
you.
because he actually forgot that it was his anniversary. So he could save face with his wife. The fact that we actually congratulated him a day before the time. So
Oh, that's classic.
so you can, if we can help marriages to sort of remain happy and successful and not have important dates being missed,
But
then I think we're also doing something right.
that's classic. Oh, that's good. That's good. Let's just quickly talk about mentoring advisors. How do you mentor advisors? What's available in the market? And how can we help each other?
So when we also started RIG, we have never been an idea that we wanted to be one of the big firms in the country. I think
Mm.
we quite a niche business. We've got a specific calling on the type of client that we want to work with. Meaning, why I'm just mentioning that is just that I think we'll never be, well, not never. I think things can change, but we don't have the idea that we want to be more than 5, 6 advisors, because then we can keep control of how our advice is given and what's needed. So obviously
Mm.
mentoring in that space, getting maybe every 2 or 3 years a new advisor added to the team. I maybe didn't mention it earlier, but then we have a 3-year discipleship program within our
Okay.
business that Willem also brought in initially. So when you sign up, you're also signing up to this 3-year discipleship program because of what we stand for. We've got to make sure that everyone is very solid
Yeah.
in their relationship with God. So just the basics and sort of intense study and building on that. So but that's very limited on how much time you can actually put in that. And I think that is where this whole picture of Kingdom Advisors in the US, Kingdom
Okay.
Advisor
Mm.
Canada over the last few years is something that we are very, very adamant that we want to have come to South Africa. So if any KA in the US or KA in Canada wants to put pressure on KA to be being able to sort of release that to South African side, I think we're going to probably be 20 after this year, probably 20 people that have completed the core training in South Africa, which I'm very proud of, but that's where Advisor for the Nations was started. So Advisor
Okay.
for the Nations, supported by KA, supported by KA Canada, without us
Mm.
necessarily being able to get the CKA, the Certified Kingdom Advisor designation, was something that when we started the business, we wanted to create. It took us 10 years to get to a place where we had our first conference and actually knuckled down,
Yes.
ended up doing the core training, going through that process with Lorne Robinson from KA Canada. But the idea there, what we have is that we want to break this whole thing of scarcity mindset of us being competition for each other. I think, honestly, feel that there's obviously more people that need to be. The church can't reach everyone, and us in the financial world, everyone needs a will. Everyone needs to do financial planning. They need to save money somewhere. They need to have policies and everything in place. So if we can get to a place where there are definitely more clients out there than what there are advisors. So if
Yes.
we can get to a place where we can support other advisors in other firms as well to not feel isolated and alone, that we can get
Mm.
to a place where we can help them to give advice from a biblical worldview point of view, that it can be based on
Mm.
wisdom from the Bible, then that's what we're trying to do with Advisor for the Nations. It's also the support that you gave to us last year when you came to our conference and spending
Mm.
time together. I know it's a lot of encouragement for the Canadian advisors when they hear that, listen, this thing's taking off in South Africa now
Mm.
as well. We're supporting the UK Kingdom Advisor movement that's busy getting up there. But the idea there is just that we're there for young advisors new in the industry,
Mm.
or guys that are probably lost in the corporate spaces and just feel like they're a number.
Yeah.
There that we can actually, it's just another tool in the toolbox that you have. If
Well,
you can tell
I
people that you're giving advice from this biblical base that you've built things
yeah.
on.
I think it's more than just another tool because I've been in the industry for 30 years and did the core training last year, as you say, and it completely changed my mind again in
Yeah,
terms of the way that I speak to clients, you
yeah,
know, and the way that I think the software needs to speak to clients and how
mm,
advisors need to speak to clients through the software or without software. For me, it's core whether we speak from a faith-based discussion with clients or whether we speak from a values-based discussion is
mm,
the same kind of thing. It's like
100%.
gravity. If you're going to jump out of a building, you're going to fall. If we're not generous with money, irrespective where the money goes to, ideally to good places, but if we're generous with money, then money is not going to have a hold on us. And so a
100%.
lot of those kind of things, no, thanks for bringing it up. It completely changed my way of thinking about money in my personal capacity with the family as well. And it kind of helped me to put some rails around the discussions with clients and what I need to talk to them about. But obviously, is to have the timing right with my own family, the timing right with other advisors, because we also move slowly. Most of us need a lot of time to change, but I've also found it super helpful, the Kingdom Advisors or the Advisors for the Nations material. Thanks for bringing up. I think that was excellent. Let's try to land this plane here nicely. But just quickly, in terms of what excites you about your company, but also the industry from a financial planning perspective over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think, let's say 10, 15 years ago, I think being a broker was probably always the punchline of a joke. It was always,
Mm,
and whereas I think it's just our industry in general has become a lot more professional. So I think that is even us as a Christian company or a company based on Christian values, we are not there to be liked or supported because we're a Christian company.
mhm,
We must be used and utilized because we're doing things in excellence and giving someone advice which is above the norm or above the average. And that means being as professional as possible. So I think the reasoning behind how someone should realize, listen, there's something different about RIG or the advisors in RIG, and that should be because we're doing things in excellence and doing things in a professional, courteous, humble
mhm,
manner. Actually, so I think that excites me about where we're going with RIG and the people and the team that I have with me and where we're growing towards. But in general, also with the Financial Planning Institute in South Africa and the way that things are
mhm.
being forced to become more professional and hopefully in the next 2, 3 years, being able to have the certified Kingdom Advisor
Yeah.
designation as well, it does put that thing of excellence. It takes it to a little bit of a next level. I do believe, and that is pretty cool. So it's not just
Mm,
this guy just coming out of school selling a product. We are sales people because we are still selling something, but it's not the ultimate motivation of that. It's not just the
mm,
product or the end game. No, and I think that's something that has changed over the last few years. That it's not just that anymore. It's become a professional service, just what like an accountant, a CA,
yeah.
a lawyer. We sort of fit in our industry in financial advice or investment management. We fit into that same sort of space as what those
Yep.
highly qualified financial advice, financial what CAs and accountants and the way they fit in now. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Last three fun things. What are you reading at the moment?
Yeah, so like I mentioned to you as well, but I think it is fast becoming my favorite book. But Money, Possessions, and Eternity of
Mm.
Randy Alcorn, really very powerful book, very challenging. I think I was challenged
On
by the
my,
core
it's on my desk.
training.
It's on my desk
Sorry.
to read.
On your desk. Okay. No, it actually reads quite easily, which was surprising, but it is very deep. I thought I was challenged by the core training last year and the work that we were doing there, but this has sort of taken that to a much deeper level,
Mm,
which is an absolute privilege. I love stretching myself. It's something that we were taught by Willem to keep on doing, but it's just that focus on losing focus of everything that's happening around me. I think the thing I was thinking about saying earlier was that if we can just help someone to always be in control of the situation and not have the situation being control of them, the only way we can do that is having a focus on the eternity and where we are going towards and why we are doing what we are doing. And I
mm.
think the core training was that how much is enough question is also a very very simple question, but it doesn't have a simple answer. But yeah,
You have to kind
Randy
of pause.
Alcorn's Money, Possessions, Eternity, very, very good book that I'm
Yes.
reading. Then I
You-
like sport. I like sport books as well. So anything to do with sport.
Well, let's go there. Who's your favorite rugby team?
So I support the Natal Sharks. I did in the provincial side, and then obviously the Springboks. So not going to go anywhere else. But I spent a lot of time with the Canadians last year, and I've never watched baseball. I've always had a big intrigue in watching baseball, but I was very sad last year when the Blue Jays couldn't pull it
The
off in the
only
in
the
the
only
World Series.
Canadian team in the World Series.
It is. So it was so close. So
It was very close. Let's close off. Henny, what is your superpower?
yeah. So in my professional capacity, I would say um, the thing that people always appreciate about me is the fact that I have discernment. And actually, I think just being probably as unemotional as possible in situations. I think that that sort of breaking of materialism and
Mhm.
not sort of being controlled by that does help a lot. So I think it's obviously, as a financial advisor, a big value add, I believe, but it's a privilege to work
Mhm.
with people, to being able to use that gifting.
Annie, thank you so much for your time. It was great to chat to you. For me, the things that stand out is that accountability with other people, the advisors for the nations, Kingdom advisors, a lot of good mentoring kind of stuff there.
Yeah.
RIG, and the humbleness and just the advice with purpose
Mm.
that you guys bring to the industry. I just want to really thank you for your time
Thank you,
and
Vincent.
thank you for pushing us forward as an industry.
Yeah, it's actually just such a privilege being able to sort of connect, not just on the South African side, but I think with us, with the Canadians, with the UK
Mhm.
guys, with the US guys. It's so intriguing, and to see where the world is actually going with that now.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vincent.